Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, hello and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going, Sarah?
So good, so good.
Are you still mad at me?
No.
Okay, sure.
Actually, maybe because you have like all women in your household, I was just telling Ryan, you're very good at handling my brand of crazy.
That's awesome.
It's true. It's true.
That's a weird compliment.
Coming
Thank
from a
you.
double divorcee, it's important.
Gosh.
All right. Well, enough about my personal life. Today we wanted to talk about, Jay's actually not kidding because we had a conversation that sparked this podcast. And we're wanting to discuss, where does marketing stop and sales start? And yesterday, Jay and I, we every week we have a marketing meeting. And for those of you who may not be familiar with this coined term that marketers have made up, it's smarketing, sales and marketing put together, because they're trying to be friends. And so I think someone somewhere thought, if I make a word like a benefer, the magic will happen. And the value of that meeting, though, has been how much overlap and yet how gooey and unsure we are of each other's roles sometimes. And you can feel like there's a lot of clarity until there isn't. And so we've been doing a lot of marketing. Maybe some of you who are listening to this are super sick of seeing us on LinkedIn or wherever, but um, we've really put our all into getting our message out there this year. And we've done a lot of new tactics, and a lot of those tactics are for clients, but we test them ourselves. I think that's probably, if I could say there were a few keystone moments when I first started here 10 years ago, that has always been consistent at StringCan, that we do not typically try to guinea pig things on our clients. We will do them ourselves, or at least do a really good vetting job of making sure that we understand the process and the tactic. And so we've been working on HubSpot Breeze, prospecting agents, cold email, and Jay was rewriting some copy and he wanted to show it to me. And I went into that conversation thinking, wait a second, he is in charge of sales and I'm in charge of marketing. Shouldn't I be the one writing these emails? And so, Jay, I'm going to just like lob this one over to you. What
Okay.
is your perspective? What is the answer to that question? Who should be writing a cold email?
That's such a loaded question. Well, obviously, we got in that little uh debate. Is that the right way to say yesterday's
Yeah, because you
conversation?
immediately paused me. We're like, wait, wait, wait. I have strong thoughts. Let's save
Yeah.
it for the podcast.
I think, to be fair, I mean, again, when I think about our clients, and we have some clients that have, a three-person marketing shop and a 10-person sales shop department. And then we have some clients that have a two-person marketing team and a 100-person sales team. So I think that question, it just depends on the culture of the organization and the industry they're in and how fast they have to be moving. Again, I think that from a plugging our book perspective, this was one of the ones we talked about in the bottleneck section. A blend between the reactive rhythm of departments and teams working reactively, and then also like the ghost handoff discussion around passing the baton. And so I think, a well-oiled machine of an organization, regardless of your size, everyone should know kind of like where, what their responsibilities are and who's doing what. But what gets really complicated is, not micromanaging the process. And so to answer your question, this is where this gets really hard. If you said to an organization from a sales perspective, hey, there's an opportunity you need to follow up on, And, maybe email is one of the ways you would do that, besides maybe, phone calls and whatnot. Typically you wouldn't ask a marketing person to write the email for you to follow up on a sales opportunity because that salesperson in theory should know the ins and outs of what's going on, where it's at, and in the sales cycle, the personality of the client receiving it and how to word stuff. But obviously, again, the best salespeople typically aren't the ones that are the most effective at writing copy. And so I think, where I was thinking about this situation is, again, I was working on maybe taking it too seriously around the personalization side. And again, from my experience, everyone is just being bombarded with so much advertising and various different marketing efforts, and you start going numbed and blind to all these things. And so for many, many years, I've taken the whole personalization side of not just, hi first name and insert company name. I try really hard to make the every email feel like it's written 100% custom to that person based upon their activities, various buying signals, news about their company and whatnot. And so I feel like as part of my job on the, wearing my sales hat is that's what my responsibility is. And so me taking that information and sending it over to you, Sarah, and asking you to write the email to me just seems very inefficient. And so I think for me, where I believe, to answer your question, where I believe, the marketing versus sales side goes is marketing should be setting up the strategy and providing, templates and directions and just giving support to the sales team. And then the sales team's job is to take all the data they have from working with those clients and then leveraging that and personalizing it. But there has to be some kind of bumper lanes in place because, you can go, as you see me do, you can go so far. And I think for me, where this gets super blurry, and, I don't always practice what I preach around this, is I know marketing so well. And so for me, it just sounds like complete craziness to think about me stopping what I'm doing and then running over to you and asking for help on how to draft an email because I feel like at that point I'm already engaging with that person and it feels more like a sales activity versus a marketing activity. But that being said, to round this whole thing out and speak from both sides of my mouth, I think this is one of the areas when we talk with our clients, and I'm so glad we do this for ourselves because now I have a much higher level of empathy. This is a really, blurry area. And I just don't think no matter how good you are at setting up, process and procedures, just life happens. And people get busy and you have things going on and you want to be efficient. I think it's just really hard to be like it's always, black and white. That's why I think me and you got in that interesting conversation and why I was getting a little frustrated that you were getting frustrated because I was just like, I'm doing my job and I feel like this is the way to go. And I don't feel like I need guidance and help from the marketing department. And that's kind of, my 2 cents around that question. That's a lot, I know.
And over to you, Sarah. Uh,
And what do you
rebuttal.
think now?
I I feel like, and maybe this is I'm maybe admitting ignorance on the air here, but because I didn't come from a strict marketing background, I kind of, what was the term we said? I felt it through the fire, trial by fire, trial by
Yes.
fire. That is definitely how I've learned this industry, which frankly is beneficial for my brain. It makes it stick. However, I have a little bit, I guess, of a black and white philosophy on sales and marketing where to me that was a tactic, the cold email. And I felt like marketing should be driving these tofu types of situations, which is top of funnel for all my jargony people. And so if marketing is driving leads to sales, marketing should be responsible for all the activities going into sales's pipelines. And this one was like, yeah, Jay is better at it, but it made me feel like I'm a little out of the loop on what you're saying. I know it's because you're the business owner, it's a little different, but I thought, gosh, how would someone else feel if there was a disconnect in what was being said to the prospect versus the salesperson. So what marketing is saying toward the
Mm-hmm.
prospect and what sales is saying. Now, where this didn't blow up in our faces is that we had the conversation. And again, you were showing me the copy. So I knew what was being said. And we have an overall strategy. So I had to leave some trust in, okay, you're taking the strategy and you are personalizing. So two-thirds of that is definitely best in sales, not in my world. I would be writing these emails not knowing these people. Yeah, you have the conversation with them and I'm aware, but you have so much more knowledge, so many more minutes versus a download you're giving to marketing. And I think there's maybe a little bit of leeway where, however, your sales and marketing team is built, you need to shift just a little bit toward their skill set and give them the opportunity to move maybe in one another's spaces, maybe a little like territorial kind of jump to make it really successful. And I kind of felt like if we hadn't had that conversation, I still don't know how I feel about it. I I
Control
like
freak.
I a little maybe that is it. Maybe the control freaky part is happening, but it is, how many of those it does feel messy though. To say it out loud, you and I talk about our revenue flow audit and the flow map. When you go through that process and you identify ghost handoff opportunities, that is a major area of drop. So from the initial conversation, it is interesting how marketing can kind of come in and out during the sales process. And that seems to me inefficient, but finding opportunities for efficiency where it's not a one in, one out, one in, one out. Maybe it's a two in, one out, three in, one out type of activities. So it's not so jumpy.
It's interesting. And again, I beyond appreciated this conversation because it got, my brain spinning and thinking about some stuff. So, for those that are listening to this that really do want this not to be so, as Sarah says, gooey, is that the word you always use?
Hmm.
I was called messy, but whatever. Um, we have one client that I get constantly inspired by because, he does at his manufacturing firm is so good about this. And, the analogy that me and him had this interesting conversation about earlier this year was that when he looks at the entire kind of like flow process, until a prospect or a lead raises their hand and says, I'm interested in talking to sales, he believes that it's 100% sitting on marketing. And so, in defense for you, Sarah, in this situation, if he was in this room, having that chat with me and you yesterday debating about this, he would have felt strongly that what you said was correct. That, again, in this situation was a little bit different, but let's just make it a little more black and white or clear for a second. Let's pretend that I spoke at an event, and all the attendees that came to the event were on a list. Yes, those people have heard me speak, but I technically have not engaged or developed a relationship with any of those attendees besides just maybe seeing their face for the 20, 30 minutes I'm speaking. If the conference or event gave us the list of the attendees, or they, downloaded something and gave us their information, that still is a lead or a marketing qualified lead, however you want to look at it. In theory, what I would have done is I would have now done my prospecting, but that still probably is more of a marketing activity. So, from the example that I showed you the other day, is those people I considered a more of a sales opportunity because they had engaged in various sales emails, not marketing emails, and showed interest. And that's why, from a reach out perspective, I was able to kind of do a follow up from that. Um, but, again, I think from a marketing versus sales side, when it comes to, that kind of tactic, maybe a good way to think about it is until that person responds and is interested in having a sales conversation, it could still be over in the marketing world. But no matter what, I think what is really kind of fun or exciting to see is that if a company is really well aligned and the teams are working together, Marketing and sales are in a unified front, all working towards the same KPI around generating revenue. I think that the marketing team should be learning from sales and, step into that zone a little bit, and then vice versa. And that's where I think me and you, where I feel like it gets so blurry is, we don't have a massive marketing and a massive sales shop. You're listening to them. And I think for us, because I have a very strong background in both marketing and sales, I often don't think about the consequences of keeping this a marketing activity and passing that baton back over to you or have you own it until that person shows interest. So to be fair to you, I think in this situation, even though I was a little annoyed, I think you were right now that I'm eating crow, whatever the stupid phrase is.
Okay, so what's funny is I actually disagree with
Oh
that.
gosh, here we go.
Okay, so I was thinking about the whole black and white thing, and I'm like, well, an email is a form of conversation with the prospect. And that will help you have better conversations. And maybe that alleviates a little bit of the disconnect. Have you ever been on a sales call and you've had it maybe exchanged a bunch of emails with someone? You get on the sales call and you're like, am I talking to the wall? Like, did you even transfer any of this information before we had this call? And I think that's a little bit of what I'm seeing is if I were to define sales and marketing, I would say any kind of conversation with a prospect, whether it's through an email or a Zoom meeting or an in-person chat, that is sales. And marketing has to take that information and provide gap fillers to build up the trust with the prospect and the company. Meaning, I need a one pager, I need a case study, I need a flow map demo, whatever the thing is, marketing helps provide the next step, the trust building that sales has already been working on. That's where I
No,
did a little bit
no,
of
I
a
love it.
180.
And again, that's why I think, I'm glad to hear that even on this call, we're both kind of flip-flopping a little bit. And I think, again, when I think about a bunch of our clients, and I really thought about that before we got onto this recording for our podcast, is it's like on paper we have clients that look exactly the same, similar revenue size, similar number of employees, similar marketing and sales departments, similar culture, but then there's all these nuances based upon availability, skill sets, industry focus they're going after, whatever it might be. So I just really feel like, this is one of those areas where I do not feel like it's so beyond obvious that every company should follow exactly the same thing. And then again, depending upon the tactic, you look at traditional versus digital, again, like, me speaking at a conference, I'm there often alone. I don't have anyone there on the marketing side to support me. And so it's my job, in my opinion, from the sales side to, old school, develop my Rolodex and get, contacts and whatnot. And then so from there, maybe I think my lesson learned from all of this is that as you're developing new opportunities, new tactics, whatever it might be, I think plain and simple, black and white is you need to have the conversation. So when I think about things like the conference, is that what should be done is whoever is attending the conference, like the sales side or executive team, is meeting with marketing, and let's now do a planning session. So what needs to happen beforehand? Everything from assets you need, helping set up appointments, whatever the things that are going to make that process go as smooth as possible. And then what happens during the event, from a, engagement, social media, because again, like people will start, posting out there on LinkedIn and whatnot. Hey, I'm at, Jay's session and I'm really finding it of interest. And then it's all the post activity and all the workflows around there. And that's where I think, again, the part that I get super excited about is when we have clients, and even for us, when I see the marketing and sales team working as a team, versus being solid apartments, be like, that's not my job. That's where I get super annoyed. And I think, again, it's very short-sighted of me sometimes when I think about, oh, I'm trying to be efficient. I don't want to bother Sarah and blah, blah, blah. But again, to your point, luckily in this situation, you were in the loop, but I'm sure you probably remember. I'm sure there's been many times I've done things going rogue, and then you find out about after the fact. And even if I did it a good job, it's probably still annoying because it just feels very like isolating on an island doing some random thing. So I think hopefully from those that are listening to this episode, I think my big aha is communication. Is I think being smart about, having those conversations before, during, and after. And if based upon your company's situation and what's going on, it makes sense where sales is wearing a little, mini marketing hat or marketing is wearing a mini sales hat, unless it's easily black and white, I think that is totally 100% fine as long as it's understood who owns things, who's responsible for support, accountability, the next steps, all that stuff. Then I think it's okay to have things be a little, gooey. What do you think about
Yeah,
that?
I do totally agree, and especially about your, conclusion that it's communication, because there have been so many ahas between the two of us just in having the conversation about, for example, I was thinking about you mentioned social. If marketing, so me, if I'm scouring social and I'm engaging and interacting and I'm seeing on Reddit, as our last episode chatted about, I'm hearing and seeing things. And if I keep them in a vacuum and I don't share them with you, it doesn't make you sound relevant to the prospect on the conversation. Like you're missing out on it. It'd be like watching television 10 years ago and then trying to have a conversation today. Like you're just so out of touch with reality and what's really happening and the pain points and I really think it we harp on this and guys, I know you're probably tired of hearing it and we're sorry, but sales and marketing have got to have a better open door policy conversation. These departments have got to find a way to collaborate on a more holistic level because they are ultimately trying to do the same thing. And it's like the visionary integrator duo. You are better together because you're so different. But the way you do that is through that same page meeting every Friday. And this is the same thing. Without that meeting, which funny enough, guys, we put it right after our same page meeting. It's that mindset of what are you responsible for, but where can I also help? And where might you have a gap that a quote marketer or a salesperson can help fill that other side? And so, yes, I agree. I think we're aligned in our approach and our philosophy. And again, it can be gooey. So if you're the kind of person who's like, sales must do X and marketing must do Y, you're you're probably going to find that that isn't working as well as you think it is.
hmm
It's also part of, there's just so many tactics and opportunities for conversations. I would also say it's impossible. Someone prove me wrong, but I think it's impossible for one person to own both roles.
So hard. I mean, you can have like, I mean, I love the that chief revenue officer type role that they're more from the leadership and strategy part. I feel like there's definitely opportunities there where I'm seeing in some industries and some company types having that executive level person that's kind of overseeing both departments. That I kind of like because it does force, it's almost like the glue that binds those two departments together. But again, like I've tried it. I tried being the salesperson and the marketing person, and ended up happening is, which I take full accountability to this, marketing, I think, is a lot more fun than sales. But maybe I'm biased. And you don't get rejected by posting a blog post or making a video and sticking on LinkedIn. But man, the number of times you get hung up on for calling someone or not, ghosted being email, sales is a pretty tough role. And so again, when I've worked at my own companies or other companies, wearing both hats, and to your point, Sarah, I end up actually then doing what I find to be more fun. And so next thing you know, I'm 85% marketing and 15% sales, which obviously is not really an effective way to predictably plan the growth of your company. So I think to your point, I agree that once a company is past that, I don't know, even $5 million level, and then obviously the bigger the company is, the more important. You really can't have one person responsible for all business development, sales, marketing. It's just too much.
Yeah. Check yo expectations, yo.
On that note, we'll wrap this one
Yes,
up.
on that note, thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, podcast at stringcaninteractive.com. And Jay, it was lovely chatting with you. We will agree to disagree to agree. And
I
everybody,
really appreciate you. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
bye bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.